Hello and welcome to Talk of the Town, the most downloaded AFL program there is according to the latest survey. So thank you for making us that, and congratulations to my fellow panellists, the Port Adelaide Premiership champion Warren Tredrea.
Thank you. I'm glad that you surveyed the one person and they were very, very positive about us.
These were undeniable Nielsen figures, Tredders. You can't deny evidence.
They always get number one.
Exactly. The chief football reporter for the Nine Network, Sam McClure. Hello.
Well, I've got a new thing to report now. Are those figures actually true, Seb? Because if they are,
100%.
I'll be putting in for a pay rise. Right, okay.
Look at you.
That is significant. In fact, let me just get a pen and a calculator. Tredders is going to have to go from the highest paid to more than the highest paid. You or I are going to have to go from zero to something, Seb. Good.
Hey, I'm the only one donating my time here, but it's okay because I'm looking at you, Mr. McClure. I'm feeling sorry for you. There's no torch, there's no light, there's darkness, there's gloom, there's no Melbourne football. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? I'm sitting here with lovely sun-filled room and I can watch all my television from the comfort of my own home. All the football I want. It's great.
For a moment, though, when we talk money, Sam was more excited than a Melbourne hotel security guard who's just been told a plane load of Swedish backpackers have arrived at Tullamarine. Anyway, we shall...
That's it. That's a show for the week. We're done. That's as good as we'll get.
All right, let's start with the hubs because this is extraordinary news that the AFL has given up on Melbourne. That's a sentence I never thought I would say. With it coming through that all Victorian clubs will relocate to Queensland, it's my information too that all clubs will end up in Queensland by the end of the season, though the Perth and South Australian hubs may well continue. Tredders, let's start with you from a player's perspective. They've gone up there, some of them thinking they're going to be there for 6 weeks. They're now going to be there for much more. Does that have an impact?
Oh, I think it has an impact. Anyone that's got a family, we know that some players are expecting children or their first children in their family, which makes it certainly difficult. But the complexities are that is 2020 football. That's COVID football as we know it right now. So I would suspect when it happened, boys, I expected it to be longer anyway because the simple facts were New South Wales was available to the AFL. What you're effectively saying now is that it won't be available to store teams in hubs in New South Wales very soon. So that means Queensland and the fly-in, fly-out option in South Australia, but also you could put a hub in Western Australia as long as the quarantine continues. So I think players knew deep down that this was going to go longer. It may be that they don't actually have any games in Victoria for the remainder of the season. Hopefully finals is different. So I think the reality is there's a lot of people out there outside of football going, we've been severely harmed by the COVID and the shutdowns and job losses and all that. I think AFL players, the fact that they're willing and able to do it, it's good. But we need to just see them keep on keeping on and finding a way to keep everyone associated with the game, not only the players and coaches, but also people who work in football clubs, you know, the volunteers, the umpires, the people at AFL House, the media. The whole thing is, it's been remarkable the game has continued, but the players need to keep effectively sucking it up on the positive sense, for the sake of the game so it can continue for the rest of the year.
It's a good deal by the Queensland government. Part of it is that the AFL clubs will obviously book up a lot of hotel rooms with the tourism industry suffering up there, so I can see why they have done that deal. Sam, your sources in football are as good as anyone's. What can you tell us about this extraordinary situation?
Yeah, well, it's going to happen and it's going to have a massive impact not only on the home and away season, Seb, as you reported earlier, but also on the finals. You know, I mean, have we said goodbye to football in Victoria, both home and away, and what would formerly be known as September, but now the finals for 2020, I would say so. I mean, the grand final is basically Buckley's and none to be held at the MCG, you would think at this stage. But a lot of people's eyes, said people that aren't in the media or people that aren't in football, a lot of their eyes glaze over when they hear the word hubs, you know, and we can have to stay for longer than we might have to. I'm really interested, though, Tredders, in how you think this is going to actually impact the season in as far as winning games. So from a player's perspective, it looks likely now that the two WA teams may not have to leave WA for the rest of the season, and the same being said for the two Queensland teams in Queensland. Now, you know, Fremantle won an unlikely game on the weekend, which gave them some momentum. West Coast are just starting to get going, you would think. Brisbane are going gangbusters, and Gold Coast have won a few games. Is it going to be more likely, Tredders, do you think now, that there's going to be a huge advantage for those four clubs, or is that overstated? And by the same token, is it make it much harder for a Victorian club to win the flag, do you think?
Well, I think it would make it difficult for Victorian teams to win it. But at the end of the day, you've got to have that attitude, and certainly what Port Adelaide's done to get themselves to top. West Coast, we heard their coach, Adam Simpson, having some negative thoughts probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago about hubs and looking to get home. But the reality is it needs to be Ross Lyon's old adage at Fremantle: anytime, any place, anywhere, we'll play. Easier said than done when you've got families in and out. But I know Jackson Trengo, former Port Adelaide player who's at the Bulldogs. He's taken his whole family, albeit they are young, so they're not in school and not in those situations. But my understanding now is that the Victorian schools are almost shutting down as well. So I think it would make it difficult for Victorian teams, but it's no more difficult than West Coast Eagles have had to deal with over the years, having to travel a lot. I know hubs is a different mechanism. I'm not sure where South Australian teams sit in that, where they're able to, we hear between 4 and 5 or 6 weeks maybe to play home games, but they're able to fly in, fly out without quarantine or quarantining at home. I think it's a great unknown. I think in a way it's almost more level than it's ever been. You're not having teams play at the MCG on a grand final, a Melbourne-based team versus an interstate team. But I think it needs to be the attitude is anytime, any place, anywhere to keep this game going. And there is a premiership still up for grabs. And I still look at the intensity of the games. Yes, it doesn't look as pretty and the players aren't prepared enough, but they're trying as hard as ever to keep this game going, and full credit to them. So I think the premiership's still there to be won, and there's a lot to be excited about, even though it is a season out of the norm.
Before we move on from hubs, Treaders, I just wanted to run this by you. The NBA, the basketball in America, have set up their hub, and they have a snitch line where players who see another person breaking COVID regulations can ring in and dob this other player in. How do you reckon that would go in the AFL?
I reckon there'd be a lot of pranks to start with. You just have to dob in the bloke who gave you a cheap shot or cleaned you up and didn't get pinged in the tribunal. Or let's face it, if you're Port and Adelaide, you'd get each other, West Coast and Freo, Collingwood and Carlton. Mate, there'd be a full-time AFL official investigations officer who's going to work on snitch line. I wouldn't be taking any of those guys as valuable witnesses whatsoever. But if we want to give some perspective too, the NBA hubs, everyone's moved. So I think the fact they're actually playing at grounds we know and areas we're familiar with is a positive. And let's face it, as bad as it is, right, you're still in Queensland in better conditions and better weather than you would be normally in your normal life. So I get the family bit. If you could somehow get all your families into your hubs and have that, I think it'd be the best possible scenario. The only thing missing are the pet dogs, and unfortunately they're probably not going to make it up north.
Yeah, there you go. Well, speaking of up north, a lot of footy will be played on Metricon Stadium at the moment, and the coach of the Gold Coast Suns, Stewie Dew, has been given a 2-year contract extension taking him to the end of 2022. They've had a great start in 2020, Sam. Is it a bit premature? Was there any pressure on to extend Dew's contract?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they've been working on this since the back end of last year, Seb, so it was always going to be announced. I think COVID threw a spanner in the works there, but, he's been extended, and quite rightly, I think, Treaders. They're just starting to get going. They've started the place again. They look like they've got the list that they want to get moving forward. And I tell you what, given one of the debuts that we saw on the weekend from Isaac Rankin, there's some special talent at that footy club. I'm really excited by them.
Yeah, I agree exactly what you're saying there, Sam, because, he's a former teammate of mine. He's a ripping fellow. One, you want him to do well, but he inherited, let's be honest, almost arguably a basket case. They'd lost Tom Lynch, Gary Ablett had left. All of a sudden, their senior players had gone. Only some had stuck, but they went hard to the draft. They went hard after some amazing talent. Lukosius, Rankin, as you saw on the weekend, after not playing all last year, plays one game of footy and it's out of this world. All of a sudden, we think about Matty Raup. Who was that guy a few weeks ago? They've got him on the list. Their talent is brilliant. What he has done, though, and hearing Rankin speak on the club website was interesting yesterday for me, because he said, talking about Adelaide, and no doubt the Crows would love to get him, or Port would love to get him home. He goes, I've got no reason to want to go home. He goes, I love the club. I love my teammates. I love Stuart Dew. I love the weather. You get it right in Queensland, and I don't think necessarily it's going to be everyone, it's going to be a go-home factor. They've proven that the young kids, including King, have stuck, and they've stuck for the time being, no doubt, but they're sticking. Previous years, they were leaving. So let's face it, I think what Stewie Dew has done with Mark Evans and how they're building that football club, and Tony Cochrane, I think they need to be commended, because they've had so much mud slung at them. All of a sudden, they're actually showing people this is the way forward, and it looks like they're slowly coming out of it. It wasn't so long ago Brisbane were terrible, and now they're arguably, I think, even though they're not top, they're the best team in the game right now.
You've just got me thinking, though, Treaders. I mean, all what you said about the Gold Coast is right. You just hark back to the hubs for a second. we now got hundreds of AFL players permanently stationed on the Goldie. Are we going to see some strange behaviour in the coming weeks? Maybe down Cavill Avenue, anything like that?
Well, I would suspect that that's a no-go zone. There was an exceptional nightclub there many, many years ago that an old fossil Tredrea made his way into on a camp.
Really?
But I wouldn't have thought it was actually Sin City, I reckon. But I dare say those days are gone. I'm not sure the AFL saying, okay, boys, you've got a free afternoon. You want to go surfing, golfing, or Sin City? Even if it's still there. No, it won't be happening because they're not allowed to do much. But I think it's the perfect venue for them to make the season go. Yeah, golf, you've got all the bits and pieces. And let's face it, these players are still getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. So whilst I want to feel sorry for them, they're doing all right.
Did you used to roll that kit, Don Johnson, into Sin City back in the day? Or
Mate, I'd probably wear club issue trackies. That's how old I am. Sorry, yours is not that different to mine now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit more youth in it. That's all right. Anyway, we move on, Seb.
No, we do.
Thanks.
We do. I went on one footy trip in my illustrious career to the Gold Coast. It took years off my life. Let's move on. Let's move on to the other expansion club, the Greater Western Sydney Giants. And the headline here from Tom Morris from Fox Footy, who wrote a column saying that one option the coaching panel at the Giants had looked at was dropping Steve Coniglio, who hasn't been in his best form. He is, of course, the captain of the club. Now, that drew a huge reaction. Keeping in mind the piece was about it being discussed. It wasn't about saying that Coniglio would be dropped. And among the responses online, this from Brett Deledio, who just went with, Tom, please. Sammy, is Tom Morris rightly being put to the sword, or is there a bit of an overreaction to his column?
Oh, no, definite overreaction. And by the way, I don't think it's an overreaction from Brett Deledio. I mean, Brett's not there anymore, but still obviously very close with everything that goes on at the Giants. I'm with you, Seb. I mean, you got to look at what Tom actually wrote. And he wrote that he was fighting for his place in the team. Now, there's no doubt anyone that has been, A, watching GWS, or B, speaking to people at GWS, that Coniglio has been going terribly this year. He's just hit a horrible run of form, and that happens to the best players, Treaders. It happens to guys who win Brownlow medals. They have bad runs of form, but his has happened at a time where he's, A, just become captain, and B, he's just signed a 7-year deal at $1 million a year. So there's always going to be more pressure. We could have a discussion journalistically about the risk versus reward of writing a story that he's under the pump, and then if he doesn't get dropped, it looks like you were wrong. But that's not what Tom has done. Treaders, I don't think he'll get dropped, but geez, he's not far off. And I think, and I don't often get into the opinion game, I think if he wasn't captain, he would have been dropped.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I saw him play last week, and he played against Port Adelaide. I called that game for 5AA. He didn't play well. He's not playing the football that we saw of last year, who I think arguably before he got injured was the best midfielder in the comp. And I know that's a big call, but he played defensively. He'd kick goals on the players. He'd be a real one-arm accountable. He's not a one-way footballer. There's two ways of thinking. The old player in me goes, all these guys are his former mates or teammates or former teammates and current teammates going, I'm going to just get out and support him against the journo. People who write that article, yep, I get it. I work on both sides of the fence. I'd sit back as a player and go, oh, so you want to defend your mate? They probably read it and go, he may be dropped, but they're out. All they're trying to do is trying to just defend their mate. And realistically, the story could be correct. We don't know. What I will say too is that it's very different to being a vice captain as a captain. I was a vice captain who became an acting captain and was lucky to have the ultimate success many years ago when Matthew Primus was injured. 2 years later, I was put in as captain. I thought I'd pretty much auditioned for the role or been in the role partly anyway because Matty had spent a long time injured. I can tell you right now, once I stepped into the shoes and wore the number 1 at Port Adelaide, it was a different ballgame. Sponsors come looking for announcements in the club, want to use who? They want to use the top few players and they want to use the captain. When you wheeled out and it's a big controversy, the captain speaks. When someone's going through a personal issue like a divorce or family sickness and you're there to be the empathetic side, it's the captain who's involved in checking on them and seeing how they're going and dealing with the development officers. So I actually think there's two ways captains can go. You can get the guys, and a classic story was back in 2000, the end of 2000, both Adelaide and I think and Port Adelaide at the time named new captains. Crows named Mark Prosciutto, who replaced Mark Bickley. Matthew Primus replaced Gavin Wanganeen. Matthew Primus took off and soared. He was All-Australian, I think, 2001, 2002, and then injuries hit him, and he had a wonderful period of leadership. Mark Prosciutto was a little slow out the blocks. people start questioning whether it fit. But you know what? Sometimes it just takes some time for your form and all the extra stuff to get it all right. And I think Stephen Kinleo will be a wonderful captain. But at the moment, his form's struggling because he's got a whole new role. And no doubt he's been asked to do a lot more extra stuff, particularly in a very, very difficult year. And I think it'll hold him in good stead in the future. But I think, make no mistake, his form is going to boost very, very soon. But at the moment, he's struggling. And I think, for me, it looks like a player who's struggling with a little bit of the expectation and a new life as captain and doing a lot more than you normally used to have to do in your week.
Who was the last captain dropped from memory, Sam? It's been a while, is my point. I'm not sure I can...
I don't remember, Treaders to go back further than me, I don't remember one being dropped in the peak of their powers when they were captain. I mean, the one that springs to mind early that was captain is Nathan Jones, you know, who gave up the captaincy and passed it on, obviously, and now finds himself outside the best 22. But that does happen towards the end of a career. I can't think of one Treaders in their mid-20s.
No, I don't think so. I can tell you right now, I was one that probably should have been. I was coming back off a knee injury, and our team was flying in 2007, and I was probably struggling compared to how I'd played my previous career. And I thought I was going to be dropped on my 199th game, but Choco stuck with me. So there is that element too, that times that if your captain is fit in this, you sort of got to have to play him. But I think from this perspective, he's not terrible, but he's just below his best, and we know how good his best is. So there's other people who are probably worse contributors in the team at the moment, but because it's a big name in Cornelio and we expect this level, maybe he's playing to this level. I think the gap will close very soon. He's a star.
He certainly is. If you can remember, send us a tweet at Footy on 9 as to who was the last AFL captain dropped. Joe Daniher, calf injury, or should I say calf injury, pushes his return back 2 weeks. Sam, this is beginning to either look like Joe just has the worst run of injuries ever, or he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a really difficult one to talk about because I reckon Treaders guys that get injured long term, you know, they can have setbacks that are unrelated. Now, it's impossible to know if this one's related to his previous injury or not. But, you know, he's working to get back as hard as he can from a groin. And when you're stepping up your levels and your training loads, often something else can go. I'm actually not surprised that he's had a setback in a different part of his body, Treaders.
Yeah, well, I think I agree exactly what you said there because he spent so much work getting himself fit, getting himself right. He's had numerous injuries, as we know. It was all pelvis, groin-related injuries, and he's pinged a calf. Well, that could happen. Yep. But for me, it sits back and goes, we've talked about this earlier in some earlier shows we did earlier in the year to say where things are at. It doesn't change where these futures at Essendon. I think probably, you know, a lot of part of injury, there's the medical and physical side of injury, but don't underestimate the mental side. If you're inhibiting yourself, if you don't have the full confidence to do stuff, then I think you can also find yourself getting injured in that way because you're changing running plans or you're a little bit cautious. I think at the end of the day, Essendon's shown everything at this. And if this is a long-term one, it's going to keep him out for the rest of the year. I think the writing's on the wall, but he'll be looking for further options and he'll deal not only if you went, for example, to Sydney, like we know he tried to go. You go to Sydney with a football program, but a whole new fresh mindset, which I think would help him get over it. There's been numerous players over the journey who've struggled with injury, gone elsewhere, had a fresh start and gone really well. So I think as much as the Bombers would hate to lose him, I think it's now, for me, it looks a little bit inevitable to say that, hey, if he can't get on the park, then his future probably is elsewhere.
So, Treaders, take Sydney out of this. If you were another one of the 17 clubs, would you still be confident giving Joe Daniher a long-term deal?
How long-term we're talking?
3 years or more.
Yeah, I think it has to be maximum. I'd expose my club as at 3 years, and it wouldn't be the deal that was on offer last year. Let's be honest.
No.
It'd be good money, but it'd have really big triggers. So if he plays games, you know, I think he'd be on a set salary. He might be on $450,000 or something. It's a lot of money. But then if he hits his triggers, he goes into the stratosphere that we know his best foot he can get to. So I think the real challenge, realistically, is got to get himself right. But I think it needs to be elsewhere. And let's face it, if the opposition clubs or the next club, if he does go elsewhere, they're going to get a bargain player and someone who's going to be hungry to prove point wrong. But they're also they know what they're getting. They're getting someone with risk.
Let's move on to the sure things then, guys, and we'll take a look at the leaderboard. Sam, you tipped the Bulldogs over the Blues, and
I'm sick of you throwing to the leaderboard. I don't like Seb throwing to the leaderboard himself.
My favourite part of the program, to be honest.
I'm uncomfortable with this.
I need a producer. I'm just making sure I'm not the latest captain drop. We look at Tredders jumping into outright second, which is going very well.
Love a silver medal.
I want to put this on the agenda because this week we have Sam's great team, the team that he loves, the Navy Blue, Carlton, taking on the top of the town. They haven't looked this good since Tredders was kicking snags for them, Port Adelaide.
They are my certainty. The power of my certainty. Take it to the bank.
Oh, okay, Sam.
So Tredders.
Whatever. Yeah, what?
Tredders, let's have a little in-bet here. Whoever loses, which will probably be me, whoever loses has to wear opposition colours during. Yeah, okay, great. So I got in contact with Carlton earlier in the week about this, and they sent me some stuff for Tredders to try on. So there's this, but the particular one
they sent the 1960 version, did they?
Yes. I think the flat cap will go with the Don Johnson look. So
that'll go with my 42-year-old skateboard I roll around on.
That's right. So Tredders, you're doing it in this hat next week when Carlton beat Port Adelaide.
If Carlton beat Port Adelaide, Tredders.
Port Adelaide, just let you know, Port Adelaide's just released a Mankini. I'll be sending that over next week.
Please don't.
Fine.
No.
Absolutely. You'll have to put on your sunglasses because you won't be able to see the reflection of my pale skin. But sure.
I don't need to see Sam's rig, no, thank you.
What's wrong with it? I've been running. I've been working out.
Oh, Sam. I think it'd be mild and pasty. I would have thought
it is. It's certainly pasty.
Oh, dear. I just love that Sam's used our program as an excuse to get Carlton to send him some free merch. Well played.
No comment.
Very nice. All right, which brings us.
What number does he want on the back?
9.
Now let's finish with a song, eh? The Social Club, and you might have seen this, but it is worth highlighting because. Well, rarely do we see AFL players who can actually sing. I'm thinking of a former Carlton captain and club president, I think he was in the end, or vice president, Steve Kernahan. But Isaac, well, now I'm going to have to get this right, Rankin from the Gold Coast, who thrilled me.
How hard is that? How hard is it to say Rankin? What do you think he was, Rankind or something?
I almost said Rankine. Rankine. Isaac Rankine is just as talented with the guitar as he is on the football field. Take a look at this.
You had a fast car, I ain't got a ticket to anyway. Maybe we can make it there. Maybe together we can get somewhere, and any place is better. Started from zero, got nothing to lose. They were the perfect couple, that always locked lips. She gave her his heart, he said we got this. She looked him in the eyes, said I promise you I'll replace it with mine and it's not gonna move. They'd always dish their friends and put the love first. Always there when someone was at their worst. But as the time went by I started to feel like a curse, cause he really didn't know that love does hurt. But he never caught on, he was caught up. Cause growing up, he was never really taught love. His old man always did his man the wrong way, and whenever they fight, he let his son play. So remember we were driving in your car. Speed so fast I felt like I was drunk, and the city lights laid out for us. And your arm felt nice right around my shoulder, and
oh yes, Tracy Chapman sung Gold Coast style.
What? We actually we interviewed him on Sports Day during the week, and he said that he taught himself. I think his dad played the guitar a lot, but he taught himself basically how to play songs by just YouTubing the song and guitar chords on a split screen, and he'd teach himself until he could play. He's clearly very, very talented. Can we just talk about his first touch, Tredders, just to finish the show? I don't know if I've seen a better first 10 seconds in football than Rankin's goal.
Oh, yeah, he worked on the old Keanu Reeves, just doing the motion. Everyone else was going it flat out. He was in slow motion. He knew what he was doing when he had the ball. And Yeah, the beauty of it.
What are you talking about, Warren?
The Matrix,
His movement. The Matrix. His movement.
I understand the Matrix, but he needed to
He
say
was-
the Matrix.
he was-
He could have been talking about.
Yeah, but I
John
couldn't
Wick.
remember-
It could have been anything.
Oh, he is a star. And the fact that, we've been waiting for 2 years. Imagine if Carlton got him.
Yeah.
Well, they got
Imagine
Wild.
if the Blues.
Seems fine.
Imagine if the Blues got him.
They'd ruined another career.
Would you change your opinion?
Right, that's it. That's it.
Right now,
That's it. No,
Would
that's enough.
you change
That's enough.
Walsh
I put
for
my heart
Rankin
and
right
soul
now?
into the show, and I come here and I'm abused about my colour, and now I'm abused about my club. Too much.
Oh,
Send me-
dear. Well, yeah.
Send me your address. I'll send it to you now.
No, I'll send you
One
next
man
door's address.
has-
I don't want you knowing where I'm living.
Oh, okay. The Port Adelaide champion, Warren Tredrea, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I can't get across the border anyway.
No, we would love to have you here. The chief football reporter for the Nine Network is Sam McClure. Thank you.
I'm reconsidering my position on this show.
Well, you're part of the most watched digital AFL program there is.
Good point.
So thank
Good
you
point.
for making that the case right here on Talk of the Town.